Poor old Blue. Now, I don't suppose McDonald County, Missouri, ever did get the news that the rest of the country was moving along at a considerable clip. Out there in the Ozarks, in that autumn of 1908, a man was still a farmer or a shopkeeper, and if he was lucky, he was both. The hills were beautiful, the creeks ran cold and clear, and the people who lived among them were generally a peaceable sort, the kind who'd settle a disagreement over the back fence with a handshake and a mild cussing and think nothing more of it. Every so often, though, human nature being what it is, a dispute would arise that couldn't be handled by neighborly means, and when that happened, a man took himself down to the courthouse. The law was the remedy of last resort in McDonald County, though it was employed with a certain grim satisfaction when the occasion demanded. It was in just such a spirit that Raymond Abercrombie, a plain and decent man of the county, walked into the McDonald County Courthouse in the early fall of 1908 and filed suit against the Kansas City Southern Railroad. The sum he was after wasn't enough to make a banker blink, just a few $100s, but it wasn't the money that lit the fire in Raymond's chest. It was the loss of Blue, his rabbit dog, his hunting companion, his friend, killed dead as a doornail by one of the railroad's locomotives, and Raymond figured somebody ought to answer for it. Blue had been a fine dog in every regard that matters. He wasn't much to look at, perhaps, but when that nose of his caught the scent of a rabbit, he became something close to magnificent. He'd go rigid as a fence post for just a moment, ears lifted, and then he'd be off, baying with a music that Raymond had come to love the way some men love fiddle tunes. They'd hunted together every cool morning the season allowed, the two of them wandering the hillsides and creek bottoms as easy and natural as old friends do. On the morning that ended it all, a rabbit had laid its scent right along the railroad right-of-way, and Blue had followed it as surely as if he'd been called by name. Raymond saw the train coming and hollered for Blue to get clear.
Come here, boy, come on.
He hollered again, louder.
Come on, boy.
Blue didn't hear him, or if he did, he'd already made up his mind that no locomotive was going to come between him and that rabbit. The train came through, and Blue was gone. And Raymond stood there in the morning quiet, with nothing left to show for it but grief. He buried Blue proper, gave him a good spot under a sycamore tree where the dog had liked to nap on summer afternoons, and then Raymond did what a man does when the world has wronged him, and he can't let it pass. He filed his suit, alleging that the Kansas City Southern Railroad and the engineer who'd been running that locomotive were negligent in the killing of his dog. The case came before Judge Paul Mitchell, who was known throughout McDonald County as a fair-minded man and, perhaps more to the point as far as Raymond was concerned, a man who kept 2 hounds of his own and hunted with them regular. Raymond had heard this and took it as an encouraging sign. He figured if any judge in the state of Missouri could appreciate the depth of a man's attachment to a good rabbit dog, it was Paul Mitchell. When the trial date arrived, Raymond came to court representing himself, which is a thing a man can do in America, though the results vary considerably. The railroad had sent 2 lawyers up from the city, sharp-dressed fellows who looked like they'd been ordered from a catalog, all pressed collars and polished shoes, standing there in that plain rural courtroom like a pair of peacocks at a chicken dinner. Judge Mitchell called the proceedings to order. The details of the suit were read aloud, and he asked whether either party wished to make an opening statement. Raymond spoke from the heart. He told the judge that Blue hadn't been merely a dog in the ordinary sense of the word, but a companion, a partner, the sort of creature whose absence leaves a hole in a man's daily life that can't rightly be filled. He said he didn't much feel like hunting anymore, and that the mornings had gotten considerably quieter and colder since Blue was gone. Then the railroad's lawyer rose and introduced a motion to dismiss. Judge Mitchell asked, as any reasonable man would, on what grounds. The lawyer cleared his throat and read from a sheet of paper with the practiced air of a man who believed the law was a great comfort, so long as it was working in his favor. He said, firstly, that the dog had been chasing a rabbit on the defendant's tracks, which was itself a violation of the game laws. He said, secondly, that the rabbit in question had been living on the railroad's right-of-way and was therefore the railroad's property. He said, thirdly, that Blue had been a trespasser on railroad property without permission. Then, with a small, satisfied smile, he said that the deceased dog couldn't have been much of an animal anyway, or it would have had the plain sense to get out of the way of an oncoming train. Having laid out these arguments, the lawyer sat down and folded his hands, looking pleased with himself, in the manner of men who are paid to win. Judge Mitchell sat quietly for a moment or two. He looked at Raymond, and then he looked down at his desk, and it seemed to those watching that he was a man who didn't particularly enjoy the task before him. When he spoke, he said the court found the motion to dismiss to be regrettably reasonable, and that while the court was sympathetic to the plaintiff's cause in a manner that went beyond what he could properly express from the bench, the case was sadly dismissed. He then looked at Abercrombie. "I'm sorry about your loss." Raymond walked out of that courthouse a disappointed man, though not, if he was honest with himself, a wholly surprised one. He'd known going in that the odds weren't with him. Still, he'd felt he owed Blue something, some acknowledgement that the dog's life had mattered and that its end hadn't simply been swallowed up without a word of protest. He'd said his piece in a court of law, and that would have to be enough. The mornings were still quiet when he walked out to the sycamore tree, but he figured Blue had probably known, wherever good rabbit dogs go, that he had tried